So we're going to talk today about looking at different types of word problems that involve percents. And there's really a lot of ways that you can approach these problems. And so we're just going to talk about a few of those today. Before we really get into that a whole lot, though, I do want to look at our Desmos calculator. Your Desmos calculator is the one that you'll use on your end of grade testing. It's also what I would suggest that you use in class, especially when you're working with percents, because I really like how you can put them in there. For example, if I want to find 70% of 29, for example, I can literally just type in 70, and then when I hit the percent key, it's going to pop up as percent of, which is really nice because most calculators don't do that, and then you're kind of left trying to figure out exactly what it's going to do with that percent key. So 70% of 29, and we get our answer, which is 20 and 3/10. So that's pretty easy. What I also really like about it is, let's say you were doing a question that had something to do with discounts. So for example, you had something that was regularly priced, maybe it was regularly priced $80, and the discount is 30%. So you could use your calculator to figure out 30% of 80, which is $24. So that would tell you that your discount is $24. But you could also easily use this calculator to figure out the sale price. Of course, you could find the sale price by doing 80 minus 24. So you could find the amount of discount first, 30% of 80, and then you could do 80 minus that answer. But you can actually also put this in your calculator in one step, which is what I really like about it. So I could put in 80, which is the regular price, minus, because we know we're going to subtract the discount. So we could do 80 minus, and then the way we find the discount is by doing 30% of 80. So this is basically saying our regular price minus our discount, because the 80 is our regular price. This is our discount. So our regular price minus our discount is $56. So this is our sale price. So I did that kind of all in one step. So our sale price is $56. So if you want to have just the amount of the discount, then you would just do 30% of 80. But if you wanted the sale price, you would do 80 minus 30% of 80. So I really like this calculator because when you type it in, it's really easy to see what you're doing with the percents. And that's why I would suggest using the Desmos calculator specifically for percents. But I think it's good really for most things that you're going to do in our math class. So now that we've taken a look at that, let's go to some practice problems. So looking at these problems, it says 25% of Macy's shoes are sandals. If she has 7 pairs of sandals, how many pairs of shoes does she have in all? So what we know is 25% are sandals. And it's 25% of Macy's shoes. So 25% of the shoes are sandals. Oops, let's spell that correctly. All right, what we also know is she has 7 pairs of sandals. So we can now go back and say 25% of the shoes equals or is 7, because there are 7 pairs of sandals. So how many shoes does she have in all? How many pairs of shoes does she have in all? So now we're going to get to using our strategy we learned about comparing and relating percents, parts, and wholes. So we're going to do the is over of equals percent out of 100. So in doing that, remember the 100 always goes here. And so I can see that the is, 7 is, so I'm going to put the 7 there, 25%, so I'm going to put the 25 here. 7 is 25% of the shoes. So that's what I'm looking for, is the of. So 7 is 25% of the shoes. Now remember, I put that first section here because if you remember, I said that really this is what we're really writing is a part to whole ratio. So in this case, the part would be the shoes that are sandals, and the whole would be all shoes. So now this should make sense when we look at it. There are 7 pairs of sandals. We want to know how many total pairs of shoes there are. And that's if 25% are sandals. So 25 sandals out of 100 shoes, because remember, percents are always out of 100. And if I want to solve this, I can use cross multiply and divide to solve this. So I can do 100 times 7 and then divide by 25. And when I do that, I'm going to get 28. So there are 28 pairs of shoes in all. Now, you might also just as easily say, okay, 25% are sandals, so that means if I have something like this, then one section would be sandals. And we know that there are 7 pairs of sandals, so this one section would represent 7 pairs of shoes. And that means each of the other sections would also represent 7 pairs of shoes. And then the total number of pairs of shoes would have to be 28 total pair. So that's a second way that you could do this problem. And again, there's always more than one way to do a problem. Those are just 2 ways that we could do this problem. All right, let's look at another. Mariko has a teddy bear collection. If she has 120 bears in her collection and 60% are brown bears, then how many bears are not brown? So when I look at this, it says 60% are brown bears. We want to know how many are not brown. So I could start by doing this. There's a few ways I could do this from, a few orders I could do it in. I could say, well, 100%, which is all of the bears, minus 60%, which are the brown bears, equals 40%, which are the other bears, or the not brown bears. Oops. Let's put not brown there. So then what I can say is how many bears are not brown? 40% of the bears are not brown. So what do I know? I know that there are 120 bears. So I know this piece. I can replace it. So 40% of the 120 bears is what I'm looking for. Though they are not brown. So if I figure out 40% of 120, I will know how many are not brown. So I could set this one up as my is over of if I wanted to, but I might also just look at it and say, well, really all I'm looking for is 40% of 120. So I could look at this and do 10% of 120 is 12, and if I multiply that by 4, I will get 40% of 120, which is going to be 48. So there are 48 bears that are not brown. I might also show this whole problem using a model. Altogether, there are 120 bears. And I know that 60% of them are brown, and that leaves 40% that are not brown. So I could split this into 5 parts. Each part would represent 20%. So I would say 120 divided by 5 is 24. That's how I'm getting the value of each of these boxes. And 60%, which would be 3 parts of it, would be brown. And then 40%, which would be 2 parts of it, would be not brown. So 24 plus 24, or 24 times 2, is 48. So 48 bears are not brown. That would be another way that I could solve that problem. All right, let's look at one more. If 8 out of 10 students in a class are boys, what percent of the class is boys? So when we look at this problem, we're basically wanting to take 8 out of 20 because it says 8 out of 20 students are boys. And we're wanting to find what percent that is. So again, 8 out of 20 students are boys. So we can think about that as a fraction. 8 out of 20 are boys. That says 8 out of 20 are boys. And so what we want to know is, what percent is that? Well, remember, percents have to be out of 100. So we're going to change this to be out of 100. And this one we can pretty easily do using a scale factor. 20 times 5 is 100. 8 times 5 is 40. So we would say then that 40 out of 100 are boys. So that would be 40% of the class is boys. And that's just another way, as I said, that's just a way that we could solve that problem. And we could have set it up using a bridge map if we wanted. We could have said, for example, the ratio of boys to all people is 8 out of 20, or 8 to 20, and then we're setting that up as that would be how many out of 100. That's the same basic idea as what we're doing here. And you could do it, you could solve it using a scale factor, but if it made it happier for you to do it cross multiplying and dividing, you certainly could do 100 times 8, which is 800, and then 800 divided by 20, which is still 40, or 40 out of 100, which is 40%. So again, the big idea here with solving these word problems is really look for, when you're dealing with percents, look for the part to whole relationship. Look for key things like the is over of idea and things like that. And that will help you to be able to set up and solve the problem, to find the relationships that exist. Because if you can find the part to whole relationships that exist, then it's easier to set it up on a bridge map. And if we can set it up on a bridge map, then we can cross multiply and divide to solve. Today you're going to work with your group on doing some word problems, and then tomorrow you will have a chance to do some on your own.